And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. Be sure to go check out the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast. Host Rafael Barlow from NBA Draft Junkies and author of the NBA Big Board newsletter is joined by Richard Stamen, Sam Ferris, and Leif Thulin, giving fans an in-depth look at the NBA draft, mock draft, player rankings, and of course, big boards. It's free and available wherever you get your podcast, wherever you listen to this podcast. Now, I want to go over MarJon Beauchamp here, who is, I think he has kind of fallen off the radar for a lot of people on some of the most recent mock drafts that I've seen. I've seen him drop as far as like late first round in some of these mocks. I've also seen him go kind of late teens, early 20s, give or take. I'm fairly confident he'll be on the board when the Rockets are picking at 17. I think he's a great option for the Rockets at pick number 17. He's definitely not at the top of my list, but for a lot of the same reasons that I'm really enticed by Tari Eason, I'm very interested in MarJon Beauchamp, although I do think that Tari Eason has the shooting ability, which is definitely already a win over Beauchamp, but incredibly, gifted wing. When you look at his physicals, he's about 6'6", maybe 6'7", got a 7'1" wingspan. He is going to be a tough, gritty, capable perimeter defender at the NBA level. Another guy who very much could be kind of a defensive ace, maybe a Matisse Thybulle type, great on-ball defense, great rebounder for his size. And what I really love about him and the idea of like kind of folding him into what the Rockets are doing with their young core is he is great playing off the ball, but he's also capable with the ball in his hands. Like having guys who are multifaceted in that sense, where they're not just incredibly one-dimensional offensive style players, is appealing. And I think those are great kind of foundational players that you can really build upon and try to figure out something special with, because he's a guy that can, utilize his ability to play off ball. He sets good screens. He knows how to kind of, slip a screen or, like set a screen and roll hard to the rim and then like finish well, like in and around the paint, because he's an explosive athlete. So if he's able to get, a couple steps going to the rim, either with the ball in his hands, like getting downhill, or if he's just rolling, or if he's operating in transition where somebody else is handling the basketball and he's able to just kind of fill one of those lanes in transition and just crash hard towards the rim and receive a lob or, a quick bounce pass, whatever, he's going to finish at the rim. He's an incredibly gifted finisher in and around the rim. And again, for his size, he plays well above the rim, which is impressive. I think overall, he's a smart offensive player, especially offensively. Again, you can put the ball in his hands. He is a gifted ball handler, a guy who understands how to, operate with the basketball in his hands, kind of has a lot of those guard-like skills, which is, very easy to see when you watch him play. He's comfortable with the basketball in his hands, which you can tell when a player is comfortable with the basketball in his hands versus when they're just kind of like, all right, I can do something with this, but I don't exactly want it in my hands, right? And so offensively, I think he has all the makings to be a very great slasher, driving, kind of, attack off the catch type scorer. And a lot of his damage is going to be able to be done in transition off of opportunities that he creates by being kind of that two-way force, that tone-setting defender, if you will, on the defensive side, where he forces turnovers. He forces, he applies a lot of ball pressure and creates opportunities for his team where he's able to get out and transition with his teammates and get those easy transition bucket opportunities. The biggest issue with him offensively is doesn't have a developed outside shot. And that's the biggest concern with MarJon Beauchamp, is he shot just 24.2% from three in the G League. That is a legitimate, pretty big red flag. But given the versatility of all his other skill sets, and basically you look at his game and the one hang up on his game is the fact that the outside shot hasn't, translated just yet. That's concerning, absolutely. But as he works on that outside shot, as he puts more and more time into it, if he can get that three-point shot up to a respectable percentage, then you're talking about an incredibly high-level role player who does everything you want him to be able to do on both sides of the floor. And I know that a lot of this same argument can possibly be made about a guy that's already on the Rockets in Jae'Sean Tate. The main difference between these two guys being that MarJon Beauchamp is just 21 and a half years old. So he'll be 22 maybe around the time the season starts, if that. I don't know his exact birth date off the top of my head. So he is a bit older as far as rookies are concerned. But at the same time, significantly less mileage in the sense of like, okay, this player is probably already who he is at this point in his career. And when you look at his jumper, there's nothing mechanically wrong with it. It's a good looking shot, great looking form, great mechanics. It just hasn't translated at the G League level. So I do think there's legitimate pause for concern, or I guess pause for concern kind of works, but cause for concern is the actual phrase if we want to stick with that. When you look at a guy like MarJon Beauchamp, but I think when you look at what else he brings to the table, a guy with that size, the ability to kind of play the wing, which the Rockets are, I don't want to say in desperate need of wings, but they need some size. They need some guys who they can be comfortable with on the wings, especially the way the NBA game is growing and looking in today's age, where you need guys who are capable of defending multiple positions, who can have the size and the defensive wherewithal to kind of anchor that side of the floor a little bit. They need good, sizable defenders. They need guys who kind of fit the mold of a Tari Eason or of a MarJon Beauchamp, which is why I'm really, again, incredibly enticed by him as a prospect, because the biggest hang up on him, again, is the shooting. And I know that's a pretty big hang up to have, unfortunately. But because of the way that everything else works out, his defensive IQ and awareness, his ability to put the ball on the floor offensively, both in transition and in the half court, his ability to play off ball, he's just a high IQ player, right? And when you go back and watch like the G League Ignite tape, he plays off of guys like Dyson Daniels and Jaden Hardy incredibly well, right? So imagining him in a situation with the Houston Rockets where he's able to play off of guys like a Jalen Green or a Kevin Porter Jr. or an Alperen Sengun or a Paolo Banchero, this is the kind of guy that would absolutely feast off of playing with guys like that, because he's just a smart player. He understands how to find easy opportunities, easy seams within an offense, both in the half court, in transition, to get easy buckets for himself. And even though the three-point percentage doesn't necessarily translate right away, nothing mechanically worrisome about that shot to think where he couldn't get it to a place where it's at least a respectable percentage to complement the rest of his really enticing game, everything that he does bring to the table. So with that, those are my thoughts on MarJon Beauchamp and Tari Eason as they would relate to the Houston Rockets, what makes them enticing prospects for the Rockets to consider at pick number 17 with their second first-round draft pick in this year's NBA draft. With that, that's going to do it for today's episode. If you haven't done so yet, please consider subscribing to the podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts: Apple, Spotify, Google, the Odyssey app, free and available on all platforms. Also, check us out on YouTube. Go to YouTube, search Locked On Rockets, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know how excited you are about Paolo Banchero's little secret lunch meeting with Rafael Stone. Let me know how you feel about Tari Eason and MarJon Beauchamp as prospects for the Houston Rockets in the YouTube comments. I do read each and every one of those every single day. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.